visiting the old parish church of Scotland here in Calderbank. Calderbank is where Nicole and Angelina raised their family for the most of the lives of the kids as they were growing up. And I'm going to read a quick excerpt from an experience they had here in Calderbank, from a recorded history from one of their children. It says, "Father was a man of exceeding faith in the gospel and always had a reverence for the priesthood. In his testimony of the gospel, he was never known to waver. In a crippled condition, the loss of the left arm, and with only 2 fingers and thumb on the right hand, he reared his family in the midst of poverty. He was given, as an indemnity from the Monkland Iron and Steel Company, a life's position as watchman at night around the Peter Day pit at 11 shillings per week, with free house and coal. In the midst of these days of poverty, he was approached by a committee from the Presbyterian Church of Calderbank, where most of their children were born and raised, and offered the precentorship, or the chorister of the church, with free house and garden. This was some inducement to a man in his condition and circumstances, for it offered better salary, with improved surroundings, and better house in which to live. He was gifted with an excellent baritone voice, was something of a musician and poet, and could have filled the position most capable. When told by this committee that to fill this position it would be necessary for him to renounce his religion and become a member of the Presbyterian Church, his emphatic never came with suddenness that it surprised and shocked this pious committee." Here, we'll just leave it because it's not raining yet, okay? So, Forge Row, the new houses, but this is the same place where the old house is.
The Forge Row was down there. Right, that's the Forge Row's right along there. Right?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, a photo of the Forge Row there.
And this is just would have been all the houses where the miners...
The miners lived, yes,
Right.
and the steel workers.
And the steel workers, okay.
And what's your names? What's your name?
Amen.
Amen. Haley.
Kaylee.
Kaylee. Leah.
Aaliyah, yeah.
Aaliyah, very nice. My name's David.
David. And you're from Calderbank here.
I'm from Calderbank.
Family here a long time?
Oh yes, yes, oh yes, yes. My grandparents and everything were miners. They were all miners. Here in the village. So you need a long time to see, you know, where everything was. Because there's nothing left. What's your surname?
Singleton, but that is my father's name. My mother is the one that comes from Scotland,
Yeah.
and she's a Russell.
Russell.
Yeah.
Was she called her bank?
So she's a Russell. The ones from Calderbank was Nicol Hood, and their daughter, Jenny Hood, married Thomas Russell,
Right.
who moved together to the U.S.
Uh-huh.
So the Hoods, they raised their family here in Calderbank.
Right.
They had 11 kids. One of them died,
Yeah.
but 9 of the 10 living moved to the U.S. with the
Right.
Latter-day Saints. And Nicole was buried in New Mains,
All right.
and his wife Angelina, who died just a year before, she was an O'Neill, Angelina O'Neill.
Uh-huh.
She was buried at the old Wellwind Church.
Well, wine.
Yeah, Wellwine Church.
Deirdre,
Yes.
you were in there. That's now a sort of...
I heard that they moved a lot of the,
it's now a sort of...
yeah, over to the new Monkland Cemetery.
Aye. But, well, wine, the church is now an arts centre. I believe there were 1 or 2 gravestones, I think, left.
Yeah, they said they kept some of them. I looked and contacted some people. They said that they don't have a record of her. So she's probably one of the ones that got moved over to the New Monkland.
Right. Now I'll give you a wee bit. This kind of steel work as well. You know, this was water. You need water to make steel.
Yeah.
So there were mills at Calder Crooks at Gartmess that made paper. And this came all the way. This runs into the Clyde eventually. It's the Calder water.
All right, so we're here at the New Monkland Cemetery. Angelina O'Neill Hood, Nicol's wife. She was buried at the Wellwind Church, but they excavated a lot of the bodies there and moved them here. So it says, in memory of the men, women, and children buried at Old Wellwind Churchyard, now interred here, known unto God. So we're here to remember her, and I'm going to read an account. Speaking of Nicol, it says, his greatest sorrow came on March 1st, 1874, when mother from this life to her reward. She had always been by him in his accident and the subsequent trials that followed. His companion in life, his counselor in trial, the mother of his children, she who stood by him as only a wife and mother can, was not snatched from him by the hand of death. Agnes, the oldest of 11 children, woman grown, Angelina, the youngest and only a few weeks old. No one of the family will ever forget that day. It was truly a house of mourning. Mother, too, had an unwavering faith in her Redeemer and an abiding testimony of the gospel. Firm in her conviction of duty, bore her trials without murmur. Her first impulse to care for her children with a love that was divine. Her outstanding characteristics, patience, kindness, and devotion, drew her closer and closer year by year to her friends. She possessed a high sense of morality, which enabled her to imbue her children and a legacy of eternal value. No tongue has ever told all the trials they endured while pressing on to the goal of their cherished faith, to rear their children in fear and admonition of God. They knew little of life's pleasures other than the joy that comes from a consistent life. They had known to an extreme degree the keenness of hunger, for many times they went without food, that the Barneys might be supplied. They were ever ready and capable in defense of the truth, of firm character and high moral ideals. They taught chastity by being chaste, fidelity by being true to every trust composed in them, consistent as Latter-day Saints, constant in their devotion of its requirements, and believed all its laws to be the plan of redemption. Soon after Mother's death, Father moved the family to Ben Hur, Linwithshire. So, right now we're at the cemetery where Nicol Hood was buried. He was buried in the public ground, which is actually just this green grass area right here. It's also the common ground is referred to as the pauper's grave, and often people would be buried, 6 to 8 people in a plot, unrelated, and often without tombstones. So here it is.